So you can't do everything. Sue asked, how many manageable things can you vortex, essentially, right? And it's a really good question, right? I think it's going to be different and depend differently on everyone. We're all built different. We all respond to stress differently and pressure and anxiety differently. I do think we have a tendency in America to put too many things in our vortex, not too little, right? So I think we tend to put too many things in our culture and our society that we just kind of max ourselves out and over-max ourselves out, right? To where, like I said, we're not doing anything well. I resemble this remark, okay? You could just put a mirror right here as I speak. So I think we tend to do too many. I would say you probably can't go much over like core things you're going to vortex and really love, right? I would say you probably can't go over like 3 to 5, honestly, for 99.9% of human beings, right? Like these are things that you pour your heart, your soul, your energy into, and I can't imagine somebody getting over 5 of those and being able to manage them all pretty well, right? So that's kind of my general take. Again, everybody's a little different. You might be on the 5 side, you might be on the 3 side. Some people might do less, but I would venture to bet most human beings probably, again, the ideal self, we tend to think we can do a lot more than we actually can, right? This happens to me. I get a day off, right, and I don't have a whole lot on the books. Man, my to-do list is 20 items long, and I just feel like Superman. I get to the end of the day, I've knocked 2 of those things off, right? And I'm just like, I'm a disaster, So anyway, I think we tend to overestimate. Our ideal self says we can do it all, we can do so much, and in reality, we can't. And I think it's much better to be realistic and do 3 things really, really well. You know what I mean? Pour your heart and soul into it, and I think you'll get much better results from that. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, once you have those 3 things that you're doing really well in your vortex,
yep.
Does that mean you do the rest of your life poorly?
I think your life is the sum and substance of your vortices, if that makes sense. So
I have a lot more than 3 things in my life.
Sure, but like one of them might be, I don't know, managing the household or the family, or like that has 50 sub things in it, 500 sub things in it, but it's family, right? And you're given responsibilities and duties to the family, right? So that's kind of how I'm talking about it.
I'm sort of wondering, where is the line between saying it's better to do 3 things excellently versus like 100 things passively?
100 things what?
Passively.
Passively, I understand.
Like
sure.
Moderately well.
Yeah, no, I understand. They're where's Paul? This is an economic question. It really is, right? And he and I have talked about it because it really boils down to like efficiency. And then there's the Pareto principle, like the 80-20 principle. I don't know if you guys have heard this before. You get like 80% of the value of a thing through 20% of the effort, right? And then it takes another 80% of the effort to get the last 20%, right? And this is the idea behind diminishing returns. Is there's diminishing returns for everything in life. If you go whole hog on it, you can boil it. This is a true pattern across the board. If you haven't eaten all day and you eat a hamburger, it's the best thing you ever had. Your 4th hamburger is a disaster, right? Like you don't even want it anymore, and it's because you're overdoing it, right? You're not observing the proper laws there. So I guess the sense in which I talk about a vortex, I'm talking like big picture life things, almost like your identity kind of things, right? Like, so for me, I guess pastor would be one of those, right? Like, and there's a million things that fall under being a pastor, but for me, and a lot of what I was expressing today is, and again, I'm always preaching to myself in the mirror, but if I have too many things on my plate and I'm pastoring poorly, I need to take a good hard look in the mirror about that and ask God if this is okay, right? But I do agree. I do agree with the diminishing returns. Pastor is one of those positions that you could pour 120 hours a week into for the rest of your life and still not do it all, right? So you have to have like a good sense of the diminishing returns and where your effort is really needed, right? But at the end of the day, broadly speaking, I think it's best to focus in that sense. Because again, I can't love everything to the depth I would like. I have to pick and choose, and there's kind of layers, if that makes sense. Like you might pour lots of time, effort, and energy into these 3 things, and then you might have like 4 other things that you pour a moderate amount of time, effort, and energy into. And then you might have 10 things that you pour a little bit into, right? And that could be reasonable, and it differs for each person. So, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. It's all gray, right? Like it's a muddy thing. Go ahead.
I think that just the pattern of that hierarchy is worth paying attention to, because you could also just parallel the vortex with degrees of intimacy that you have in your life.
Yeah, perfect.
And like this is just a pattern that maps over and over again, where whatever we're talking about, there's always going to be a question of priority and urgency, and like so Jesus modeled for us that okay, relationships matter. That's the sum and substance of ministry, right, and discipleship. But the way he modeled it was really fascinating, because it wasn't just like all or nothing. He had an all or nothing nature to him in his zeal, but the way he applied it was hierarchical. He had the intimate 3, and then he had the subset of the 12, and then the 300, and the ways in which he committed time to these people and walked with these people had varying degrees of commitment. And I think a lot of us in the church sometimes overconflate some of our ideals with like, oh, I need to be on this level of intimacy with everybody, or this is what it looks like to have healthy, godly relationship. And it's like, actually, you're allowed to have priorities, right? And the problem is, how do we do that thoughtfully and know that we're aligned to God? I think that's the work, right? Because you have to have enough self-reflection to assess, is this appropriate? Is this right for me? But also trying to see others well too. And man, when we're all like projecting our ideal self, blah, 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 like it's just so confusing. But I think that's the work of it, right? So I think that same pattern of priority is going to be totally over here in okay, then what should you vortex to, right? Where should you live zealously in your life? Well, that's going to look so different for you versus me, etc. And we might have a really cool overlap in the church, but we can't do it all. And I don't think the church is supposed to be this exhaustive substitute for living in the world. You know what I mean? I think we're supposed to do a lot of really beautiful things here in the church, but we're also supposed to be a light that engages with the community. And so it's okay if we don't do everything well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think the illustration of the disciples is the perfect example, right? In the sense that I'm describing today, Peter, James, and John are Jesus' vortex, right? Like those are the 3 he's focusing the most energy on. They're the ones that go up with him to the top of the mountain, right? But beyond that, right, he's got, his, like you said, hierarchy. He's got his 12, and then he goes out to hundreds of disciples, And in the sense that I'm describing today, Jesus vortexes Peter in a way he doesn't doubting Thomas. And it's just the nature of the case, right? Like, because even the Son, bring your actual self up to your ideal self or your ought self. Again, you have to first do the work that your ought self is healthy, your ideal self is healthy. But let's say your ideal self is, I am the kind of person who reads my Bible every day, right? That's your ideal. Your actual self is not that, right? Well, in your example illustration, you might have to fake it till you make it if you wake up in the morning and you're not looking forward to reading your Bible, right? My point would be, read it anyway, right? And then like you said, as you wrestle through it, kind of like I was talking about today, I am almost beginning to love people, to like people, right? It has come with time. It's come with practice. I had to do the thing, and then I realized, oh, there's a different kind of joy here.
Actually care.
That's
They don't
exactly
actually
right.
believe
Yeah.
it. So that, I think, is the distinction, and it's in what you said.
To my point, how far can you extend that mask before it is a point of hypocrisy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.